we all feel this tremendous pace of change. I think we all feel that we're living through something, a fundamental shift in what's possible because of new technological horizons.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Workforce Newsroom special report. I'm Casera Weinrich, and I'm thrilled to lead today's discussion on generative AI and its potential to revolutionize the world of work. With us today are experts leading the way on this very topic. Please welcome ADP Global Chief Privacy Officer, Jason Albert, Vice President and Managing Counsel, Elena Almeida, and Chief Data Officer, Amin Vanjara. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So I want to start by addressing the pace of change. Artificial intelligence has been around for decades, yet generative AI has really spurred a rapid wave of innovation. And so, Amin, what would you say to organizations that may feel left behind?
I'd say you're not alone. I think we all feel this tremendous pace of change. And I think we all feel that we're living through something, a fundamental shift in what's possible because of new technological horizons. But I'd also say, look, this workforce is resilient. All right? We have 5 generations in the workforce right now. We've seen many technological shifts. We've seen the PC come into the workforce, internet, mobile, social media, and now this is just another technological change. So what I think about is really in the long term, agility is what's going to win in the long term. The question is not what's going to happen with the technology, but how do we choose to interact with it? How do we use and take advantage of the moments that we have? And the other thing is really, with any technology, we can get caught up in what the technology can do, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve in our organizations remains the same. So focus on the outcomes, attracting talent, maximizing your attention, controlling your costs, and being compliant. Focus on the outcomes and see what technology can do to help make that possible.
Amazing. And Elena, so to that point, thoughts on guiding people as they adapt to AI?
Yeah, it's, what Amin said is totally true. I think a lot of people feel like they're very left behind. They feel like this AI revolution has come and that they're still at the starting line. And I like to tell the employers that I speak with, you're not alone, as Amin said, but also don't feel like you need to go from, zero with no AI to a completely AI-powered workforce. I mean, that's not at all what's going on. We need to talk about kind of incremental change and managing change expectations, both from a business perspective, but also from the employees who have to get used to using a new technology that in some cases they feel like they don't fully understand. So what I worry about actually is that people feel left behind and then they get paralyzed, right? So they're like, I can't start. And I would say, yes, you can start. Pick that one initiative that you think is going to make a big difference to your employees, to your workforce, and explore that. Nobody says you need to have everything AI powered right away. Just talk to your employees, figure out how you can make that one change and get started, because you're definitely not left behind.
Thank you, Elena. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Well, look, innovation comes in waves. If we look across the payroll and HCM industry, we started out with mainframes, and then we went to PCs, and then we had servers into the cloud, and now we have AI. And with all of those, there's always the question about how do you get value out of them, and people adopt them when they see the value, when they see they can do payroll more accurately, when they see that they can enable better management of their workforces. And so when you think about AI, it's all about achieving that value. But there's something else that's important, and that's trust, because people will only use technologies that they trust. So it's important to take steps to have a responsible governance and compliance program to build that trust so that people are willing to adopt those technologies, are willing to have their data used to power those technologies. So together with value and trust, we can realize the benefits of AI.
Amazing. And so, Amin, what key concepts about AI should workers and employers understand as new AI technology is implemented throughout their organization?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll go back to this point around fundamental technology shifts, and I believe that with AI, we're in the early innings of a fundamental technology shift. So what is it? What is a fundamental technology shift? it brings things that were in the realm that were impossible to the realm of the possible, right? When I was a kid, and I would call my relatives in India with a calling card, I couldn't imagine pressing a button and doing an instant video call with them. And now I can. That was impossible to think about that, but now it's just normal. And so you think about where we are with something like Gen AI. I mean, it was almost impossible to think about writing a poem in a minute, or producing a job description or a policy, a draft that you can use and just have it instantly there that you can work with. And so a lot of what is important to think about is to really focus on that there's new possibilities. But often with new technologies, there's new doors that you can open. And what's enticing for everybody is to kind of open all the new doors versus thinking about what are the outcomes I'm trying to achieve, right? Center on those. And like Elena was saying, like pick one thing that's important to your organization. Solve the problem and think about how this new technology like Gen AI can help with that problem. And what is it particularly good at? It's particularly good at helping you to create new things, like starting from scratch and get to a good draft that you can then tweak and refine, and taking lots of information and summarizing it for you. Are there those capabilities that would apply to a certain problem, like when you're trying to generate job descriptions, when you're trying to create handbooks and policies, when you're trying to take employee feedback and understand what their sentiment really is? Taking all those specific things, is there one of those that would really apply? Start there and apply it.
AI isn't the answer. It's not the solution you put in that solves the problem, the outcome that you're trying to achieve. It is a way to get there. And I think embracing that attitude actually will help all of these organizations kind of take that next step, take that first step into this AI journey.
And I think just even building on both these points is that AI is not one thing. Right?
Yeah.
It's not like, as we think about in the human capital management world, we think about HR and payroll and recruiting and time and attendance and learning. It's not like some new module that's going to come out. It's like, oh, everything AI and it sits over here and we're going to do that. It's a foundational capability. It has the potential to lift and automate, streamline, make things easier, simpler, and more human in the way that things happen, right? And it's about how we can leverage this technology to then make each of those processes better and connect them with actually the rest of the organization, but making sure we do that in a responsible and compliant way.
Amazing. And so hearing it's a collaboration with a tool and with a technology that is going to get organizations to the the next phase in their journey. And so ADP research found that 85% of workers believe AI will impact their jobs somehow. So they know that it's coming, they know that changes are happening. But their views on whether this is going to be a positive impact fully relies upon their confidence in their own AI skills. And so, Elena, how should organizations approach educating and training their workers on the use of AI?
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't want any workers to feel left behind, right? I don't think AI is going to be the replacement for the workforce. It's a tool that the workforce is going to use to achieve, bigger and better goals. So the way I look at it, training is important for a couple of reasons. First, we want to use training to make sure that people understand the risks and the opportunities that AI presents, right? So they need to understand how to make sure that they're looking at accuracy or bias and transparency and making sure that they're thinking about those things in their use of AI. But even kind of at a more basic fundamental level, training your workforce on AI and what it is and what it's not will help bring the workforce into this technical revolution, right? So that people aren't feeling left behind, they're ready to use it, and we're kind of upskilling the workforce for this, to use AI. I think one other issue that is key for training, when you're using a tool, let's say a job description generator, right? So if you're using an AI job description generator, the training needs to be specific to that use case as well, right? So somebody who's using a recruiter who's looking at a job description that was generated by AI needs to understand how they bring their own company into that job description, right? So they know things about the particular job that's being described in the job description. They know things about that job. They know things about their company. the way I think AI really works and sings is you're marrying what the AI can do in drafting that job description plus what the human knows about the job and about their workforce. A system that trains people how to use AI in a use case specific way is a real win.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, Elena, when you and I have talked about this in the past, you've always talked about AI as being sort of that helpful assistant who does a lot of things well, may not get everything sort of quite right. And to me, that speaks to really the value that people can realize from this in their jobs, and that they're going to be able to have help with routine tasks. They're going to be able to move up the value chain. They're going to be able to unleash their creativity in new ways because they'll not have to focus on those routine things, and AI will help them in creating that. And so I think it's really not something to be scared of or that's going to displace. I think it's just going to unleash this wave of new opportunities and new possibilities as people figure out how this helps them and allows them to achieve more in their work every day.
And I think also building on that is that setting the right expectations for workers is also really important, because when new technologies come out, people they tend to have heightened expectations about what's possible, right? And so it's like, well, if we're in the early innings of actually doing this and getting this right for these use cases, to understand that we're on an adoption curve of how this is going to work, and there's a maturity of how this is going to work. Calibrate the expectations, but it's important to get started, so that you know what you're going to get and how to use it, how to add value to it, right? And then get it to the end point of where you want to achieve the outcomes.
And those outcomes, I mean, as people build their confidence in these generative AI tools, organizations are only going to see the benefits from these processes obviously increase. And so when you think of the potential advantages, I mean, that generative AI can offer organizations, what specifically can generative AI provide to HR leaders, particularly from a data perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that really when I think about what's possible with this, I think of probably three big things. There's one is like process automation, right? And to be able to say there's manual tasks that people have been doing. I have to sit there and just draft a whole job description. When you stare at a blank page and you have to do that, it takes time, right? And it's a little bit nerve-wracking. How do I get the right candidates and all that? If I could just have something that was filled out, great. It helps me to automate certain processes and get going faster. But then there's another level to it, which is proactive insights. I have an organization and I'm running HR. I have so many different departments, so many workers that I'm responsible for. How can I give the personalized attention I need to everybody? Well, it's tough. So where should I focus? Well, AI can actually surface the insights that matter. Is there a certain turnover spiking in a specific location? Is engagement maybe dropping somewhere, or maybe is it elevated somewhere, and you should reward that. You want to know what those insights are so you can know where to focus and take the right action. That helps you be better in the job and really focus. The last piece of this is personalization. I think this is what's really powerful, because with data, there's so much data about workers and the organization flowing through HR systems. And really, there's untapped potential that's sitting there. When is somebody punching in and punching out every day? What benefits elections are they making? What's happening with their pay? What happened with their promotion? What do they say in an employee survey? Imagine you can use that to personalize the HR experience. What kind of culture would you have, right? What kind of talent could you attract? Because there's not enough of you to go around. I hear that from HR practitioners all the time. AI can actually help you create that culture of care that we all want, and make moments that matter really matter.
The crazy thing is that we're talking about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence, generative AI, and we're talking about the ways it makes the workplace more human. It is. I think it's exciting, right, in that respect, because we're using technology to give us the time and the space and the breath in our day to say, how can I pay attention to what that employee needs at this moment? What am I missing maybe about what the data is telling me about a particular team that might have higher attrition than usual? I think that's the most exciting thing for me about artificial intelligence. It's how do we use a technology to really make the world more human, not less human, more human.
That's right. It's a great way of putting it.
It's incredible. And so for artificial intelligence to really provide the insights that these leaders need, it relies upon great data. And that's one thing we do well. And so when we're talking about workforce data, there are a lot of privacy considerations. And so, Jason, how can organizations ensure that they create an ethical and responsible framework in the implementation of these emerging technologies?
Well, I think it starts by really having an established governance system, right? Wherever you are in the ecosystem, whether you're creating AI-based applications, whether you're using them, whether you're helping others use them, wherever you sort of fit in that ecosystem, you need to have governance around what data is being fed in, how is it being used, because somebody's going to create a great AI application, but it may be, even if you're the company buying it and to deploy it, your data is the data that's going there. And so you have to make sure that you understand what data is going there, that you have the proper controls on it. You also have to make sure that your suppliers and vendors have proper controls so that their systems will operate properly. So it really is a partnership across the ecosystem, from those who develop, from those who supply, from those who deploy, to the end users. And you do it by starting with sort of the core principles. When you think about privacy, it's really about the use of the data. What data do I need for these insights? Are there ways of protecting the data? Maybe I can mask it and reassociate it on the back end so I can get the insight without actually sharing, identifiers with the AI tool. You think about what data do I really need to develop insights and what data is extraneous, and focus on that from a data minimization perspective. And then again, if you are transparent with users and they understand how this works and you explain that to them, you'll help build trust, and that'll get you greater permission and greater ability to use data to derive those insights and to create those human experiences.
Wonderful. And so for privacy to be on the minds of organizations, it's generally because of the shifting regulatory environments that ensure that those things remain top of mind. So Elena, what can organizations do to stay ahead of the regulatory environment, and they often as they're catching up to this innovation cycle, how can organizations feel like they are one step ahead of the regulations that are coming down?
Yeah, so first I would say not everything's new. There's a whole body of existing laws that govern things like discrimination, pay, overtime, FMLA eligibility. Those laws all exist in the world of AI just as they did before AI. And you're having different organizations like the Department of Labor or the EEOC that are issuing guidance and best practices for how to interpret those existing laws in the AI world. There are, in addition, a lot of jurisdictions that are looking at artificial intelligence specific rules and regulations, right? So we have New York City, Colorado, the European Union, a number of other proposals. And I do, in talking to people, feel like they feel pressure to how can I possibly keep up with all that? One thing that I definitely recommend is if you look through all of these different regulations, they have themes, right? They have particular areas that the law is trying to protect people in. Protect people against bias in algorithms, protect people from not knowing when AI is being used. So we have notice and transparency obligations that are being baked into these new sets of regulations. So if you look at the notice, transparency, bias, the privacy protections, and you start thinking about building your own AI ethics standards, right? So your own set of rules, you can decide as a company whether there's a law or not. I am not going to use AI without informing the end user that AI is going to be used, right? And that could be your decision and your ethical statement. It's coming up in all of these legislations and regulations, and that'll kind of put you ahead. Now, there's definitely a couple of resources that are great to look at when you're developing your own kind of AI ethics statement. ADP worked with the Future of Privacy Forum to co-develop some best practices that are geared towards the responsible use of AI in the workforce. We also have the National Institute for Standards and Technology that has issued an AI risk management framework that is quickly becoming adopted as an expectation in a lot of jurisdictions for what AI programs should entail. So I would say that it might feel daunting to try to keep up with all of these changes. So I would look to existing laws and also these new AI-specific laws to pull out principles of how you're going to govern AI and how you're going to make sure that AI is used responsibly in your organization.
And what I'd add to that, I think, is really when you look at sort of AI regulation, the thing that strikes me that's sort of unique about that as opposed to other types of regulation is because AI can be used for so many different things. We've talked a lot about it in the employment context here, but there's self-driving cars, there are other technologies, and a lot of this regulation is relatively horizontal, is that it really takes a life cycle approach. It begins from the data that you use to develop the AI, or the data that might be fed in for the AI to act upon, to how does the algorithm work? Is it accurate? Have you tested it for validity, bias, as Elena mentioned? And then you go and put it on the market. Do you do post-market monitoring? Do you see how it's acting? Do you make sure that it doesn't drift? Do you make sure that it doesn't hallucinate? And so as you build in compliance and think about these regulations, it's important to think about it as, I'm not just creating this sort of set of processes, or I'm going to go check these things. You have to think about it from a life cycle approach across the development and usage of the AI tool. But if you do that, then you're going to be in a good position to meet your regulatory obligations.
Yeah, and I like this point that both Jason and Elena made, is that when you're thinking about regulation, right? Regulators are going to have a certain process where they're going to observe, take in how the market's evolving, get a lot of data, what's happening, set out a framework, and then go to implementation of these. And so we see that starting to happen. But as a company, what do you do, right? Because you're like, well, how do I start? I want to get started. Where are things going to go in regulation? You can go ahead and set the principles down. Like, what do you believe about how you want AI to, what are the right set of ethics and practices that we want to have? Set those principles out. And there's really good frameworks that have been established. ADP has participated in those, and those are there and available, but you have to take those and tailor them to your organization. That creates a really good foundation, because wherever regulation is going to land, it's going to land. But now you're in a position where you have a framework, you understand, and you've been building according to that, which makes you ready for whatever's going to come.
And to that exact point, so what you've said is there are frameworks available, but there's not a one-size-fits-all approach that can be taken to AI implementation and development of these emerging technologies. So what would you suggest, that organizations do to determine which strategy to take in this process?
Yeah, and I think that with anything new, you're trying to figure out, okay, what's right for me, and you can look around and see what others are doing and all of that. Again, I think it comes back to that point on outcomes, right? The best thing to do is to say, where are we and what's strategically important for our company? Are we in a high growth phase and we're trying to attract lots of talent? Let me figure out what I can do to help drive that initiative with AI. Is it that, we've seen that right now, the labor market, it's still continuing to grow, but workers are actually staying in place a little bit longer. So maybe turnover is not as a big of a thing, and you're thinking about how to optimize what's happening already, drive engagement, drive productivity. So what can you do with AI that works there, right? And so thinking about those kinds of opportunities, and right, this happens in the world of HR, but also in your broader business processes, in your sales departments, right? In your service departments and how you interact with customers, and what's happening with your marketing, and of course in HR, right? All of those are possible, and I think HR as an organization with a strategic partner sitting at the table for leading the organization needs to be looking across, because HR is responsible not only for making AI deploy within HR processes, but also how the whole workforce is ready for what's to come with AI deployed wherever they may work in the organization.
Yeah, and I think when you think about a strategy in terms of HR, I would suggest that people not be afraid to start somewhere, right? Because when I think about all that we've learned over the past year in dealing with generative AI, right? The decisions that we would have made last March, right, with the knowledge we have now, maybe more conservative in some ways, or just different in other ways than a decision that we would make now. But we're evolving, and I think part of this kind of evolution of change that we're all seeing with AI is to give ourselves, frankly, the grace to say that's where we were at the time, and we're going to kind of keep modifying our approach so that it meets our ability to achieve those outcomes. It meets the comfort level we have and the knowledge that we have and the skills. So I think I wouldn't be afraid to do something for fear of maybe doing the wrong thing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and to that end, it's not a finish line, it's a consistent transformation that's occurring,
Right.
And they need to be prepared to be agile and evolve. And so Jason, what is ADP doing specifically to leverage our data and expertise when it comes to AI?
We've really built in compliance by design from the very beginning to make sure that as we have this unparalleled data set based on, having all these workers in 140 countries that we can draw upon to provide those insights, that we protect that data, that we anonymize it where possible, that we use the minimum amount of data to achieve those insights and to power that. And do that in what I would say is a safe, secure, and compliant way. We've not talked a lot about security here, but you have to make sure that you protect against things like prompt injection attacks. You have to protect against bugs that may come in from others. You have to make sure that the AI isn't going to go act in a way that's outside the constraints that you want to put across it. And so all of that goes into our compliance program. It starts with our AI and Data Ethics Council that comprises experts within the company and experts outside of the company to go look at novel uses of data. How do we think about them from an ethical perspective, and to make sure that we have the overall appropriate governance in place. It goes to our governance review process that involves our friends in the Global Security Organization, involves global compliance, involves legal, involves the Chief Data Office. All coming together to look at all of these different aspects of our ethical principles, our regulatory obligations, and most importantly, are we providing something to our clients that gives them insights, that has the right degree of accuracy, and will enable them to meet their compliance obligations. And then on top of all of that, once you have that governance process, there actually are tools you can use to help enforce this, whether to track what data goes to and from models, whether to do model and code scanning for vulnerabilities. And when you bring all that together, that's how we've approached this to make sure that we do this in a safe, secure, and responsible manner.
I think, though, we are very lucky to have worked on and helped develop that sort of amazing structure. And we had the AI and Data Ethics Council has been in place for years because we've been working with artificial intelligence for years. But for a company that's starting out and thinking about how to do this, the cross-functional team, right? That's formal or informal. You can get a cross-functional team of people in your organization to start thinking about those issues and reviewing use cases. Security experts within your organization. We have an amazing global security office, right? But for other companies, think about how you can bring in that security element and that review to what you're doing. And maybe it's not necessarily as robust as ours, right? But or robust as our system. But I think there are definitely ways for smaller companies to start.
With a diverse set of voices.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because even this group and our colleagues across ADP, like there's been processes in place to be able to do the types of legal reviews, security reviews, privacy reviews, compliance reviews of what we've been building software for a long time, right? But now the speed of change and also the way in which these technologies have come out, that we've actually take those processes and help them see better kind of interconnections between the processes, because also there's more demand for wanting to do this across our organization. There's so many ways we can unlock potential for our customers. And so it's created greater, transparency, efficiencies, collaboration between groups. And I think the point of bringing this, but you need that cross-functional team, right? No one group can do this on their own. And that's so important to actually, bringing responsible AI into practice in the way that we put products to market.
And so our approach to developing our technologies is differentiated. And so, Amin, how is our data and expertise fueling differentiation in this market by way of our AI solutions?
Yeah, in AI, the quality of the output is directly correlated to the quality of the input. That's why you see so much discussion today about where is the data coming from fueling all these AI products, right? And if you think about what ADP has, right, in our position, as we pay over 40 million workers across the globe. And think about the patterns that allows us to see in the world of work. In that 40 million is nearly 20% of the US working population. Think about all the trends of pay and in and out of work, of jobs, new job titles that are emerging, that are coming out of that. And we've been creating salary benchmarks for years, right, across, thousands of jobs that allow people to make good hiring decisions and good compensation decisions for their employees. But what Gen AI enables is another level of how we can leverage this data, which is, as part of our business model, we interact with our clients on a daily basis, where we take calls and chats, we're providing expertise, and in some cases, we're actually outsourcing and providing the HR expertise for our customers. That interaction, all of that calls and chats and texts are data that we can now leverage. And we can understand the nuances so that when somebody's adding an employee or adding a contractor, maybe moving into a new state, we understand what they need to know for their specific product, but also what they should be thinking about even further. And GenAI helps us to serve that up and help them make the best decisions possible.
One of our AI principles is really around inclusivity, right? And it's important to have diverse teams who have different perspectives precisely for this reason, right? Because it's unstructured, you want to understand how different people think. Elena made the point earlier that one of the things about AI is that we're trying to really make it human, and to have that human element, you really need a diverse and inclusive team to be involved with lots of different backgrounds, with lots of different expertise, to be able to understand all the different ways in which this might act and react to various prompts as you're building the product.
And you want your data set to be diverse and inclusive and reflect the community as well. Yeah.
So we have discussed so many beautiful things on the horizon for these emerging technologies for organizations, and I've heard so much encouragement about just having the courage to begin, and that there's a lot of resources available for any organization that's ready to do so. And so as we close, in just one or two sentences, could each of you tell me what you are most excited about when it comes to AI and these emerging technologies?
So, Kasara, I would start by going back to something I said earlier. I think it's really about unleashing human creativity, unleashing potential by enabling people to do routine tasks, by having the help and the possibility of AI, which can compute things that we as humans can't compute, and to be able to build on top of that. To me, that's really what's exciting about this technology.
You always take my answer. So, so I would say, I mean, for me, it is unleashing the human creativity, right? It is making sure that we're bringing human back to the workforce, right? And making sure that we're able to make these connections and continue developing connections on a human level in the workforce, aided by technology. Not replaced by technology, but aided by technology.
I'd say personalization at scale. I think we've always had this dream, and again, there's these things that we've wanted to have happen, right? Say, I wish, when it can, the system could just know what's happening across my organization. And so it takes things that are impossible and brings them to the realm of the possible. To know what's going on in my organization, what's happening with my specific interactions, and tailor the experiences to me. And do that for all, not just you, but all of the workers in your organization. What kind of an HR experience would that feel like? That's powerful.
Incredible. Thank you all so much for your insights and for your time and your energy on this topic. Thank you all for joining us. And for more insights, head to adp.com/AI.